This is our final panel of the day. I just want to let you all know that I'm going to be leaving prior to the end of this panel because San Diego State has our Native American graduation ceremony today at Mission Trails. And I was going to honor our 2 Native MSW students who are graduating today, but they had to go and get ready. But Maria Tinajero, who is my whole heart, I have known her since she was an undergrad and she walked through fire to be where she is today. So I just like you, even though she's not here. Give a big shout out to Maria. Yeah, Maria graduated with her bachelor's in 2020. She lost her sister during that time when she was an undergrad. We've cried in my office, we prayed in my office, we've hugged in my office, and I've held space for her as she walked through an oppressive system at a university that is very hard to be at. She came back to get her master's after working at the Center for Children in San Diego since 2020, where she is still working part-time while in a full-time master's program and interning 20 hours a week for San Diego County. So I just, in case she's listening, I just want, I love you, Maria, and just wanted y'all to love her too. You'll meet her later. And also Jenny Rodriguez, who's Tule River Yokut. Maria's Tohono O'odham from Tule River Yokuts, and her mother and her grandmother are here. Her grandmother's a social worker for as long as Linda Ruiz has been a social worker, and is very, very well known in the state and in the nation. And Jenny, wasn't so sure about our MSW program. It was, she wanted to learn about social justice. She wanted to learn about empowerment. And she wasn't so sure about all these direct practice classes and why, you got to learn about therapy when I want to go out and change the world, right? So I just honor them both for what they've walked through. And they were up here with Season today. So Jenny was up here with Season today. So I had to acknowledge them even though they're gone because they're so important to me. These amazing humans here. This is Miss Linda Ruiz from Meet by Nation of Santa Isabel. Badass at large. I met Linda in 2017 at a meeting where she called out a deputy director of a county. And in real time, I watched that person take responsibility. I watched him change, and I watched him engage. And I said, I want to be just like that woman when I grow up. So when I fight systems, it's with Linda Ruiz in my heart and my head. So thank you for that. Yes, big round of applause for Linda Ruiz. You'll know why in a minute. And Donald Rodriguez, who was a Title IV student, I'll let him tell you about that, and is now the manager of the State Office of Tribal Affairs over the ICWA liaisons. He was at our Indian Specialty Unit for 8.5 years-ish. And Miss Sunny Dominguez, who is also from Meet by Nation of Santa Isabel, and she is the manager. Those directors and managers, those get interchanged. Of Tribal Star, an amazing part of San Diego State that does statewide or county trainings all over. She does amazing work. Miss Angie Heredia, who is already been confirmed getting her MSW from Cal Poly Humboldt while being a tribal social worker. And Miss Karen Kolb-Thorne, who has also been the director of just like Linda, been in this for decades, and these folks right here carry wisdom that they're going to share with you. And I'm just going to tell you all goodbye now and thank you, and I will be back later for basket making, but I'm going to stay a little bit and then I've got to go. So thank you. I appreciate you. Enjoy this. This is going to be really good.
Before she goes, and because she goes doesn't mean you guys get to go, right? Before she goes, we, on behalf of this panel, we want to gift Tamara something for all her hard work with this symposium, because it's just amazing that you all are here from all these schools, and just the work that she has done with the SERVE program in the short time that she's been here has made such a big difference, and we have never seen this many 4E graduates, especially Native American 4E graduates, ever in our careers. So we want to say thank you. and give you this. We love you. Okay.
Hair caught in my teeth. You gotta have a comedy moment in the middle.
You do, you do. So thank you very much, Tamara. Oh, no, not really.
Okay, since you already introduced us, let's just keep going. Is that what you're saying? All right. So when Miss Linda tells you to do something, you just go ahead and do it. So here I go. Can I get the PowerPoint little intro slide up there, please? So again, mi hija, Natwani Donald Rodriguez. I'm Gabrielino Shoshone, which is a non-federally recognized tribe out of Tovangar, also known as Los Angeles, LA. Land that we share with Gabrielino Tongva, both with the dash and the slash, as well as the Quiche Nation. We have our other non-federally recognized folks down south with the Ahashman, up north at Chumash. Shout out to all those non-feds. Because we were talking about data and systems and all that. Within the current system, there is no way to document non-federally recognized children in care. Matter of fact, within the system, all the data and numbers that we have, they're wrong. They're all currently wrong. Matter of fact, so you see the disproportionality rate? It's actually more. Because within our system, the Child Welfare Services Case Management System, CWS, CMS, that all you upcoming social workers are gonna know a lot about, that little yellow teddy bear that's gonna haunt you in your nightmares. It's faulty. And so you're working with a system already at fault. Because there's an error there that if the mother, let's say, was from Mexico, but the father was from Viejas, the system is gonna track it as the child is Mexican. So imagine the disproportionality rate that already exists. When that system finally gets corrected, hopefully the next 3 to 4 years in the care system, that disproportionality rate is gonna shoot up. It's gonna confirm everything that tribes have already been saying, that there's way too many tribal children in care, but that our numbers, that our data never could really confirm because, well, our system is wrong. So I work for the Office of Tribal Affairs, and that's within the California Department of Social Services, which has the oversight authority over the 58 counties. Well, it's supposed to have the oversight authority over the 58 counties, doing ICWA, unfortunately, 58 different ways. And so, all you where are the social workers at? Who are the new coming social workers up in school? They're gonna graduate soon. All right, welcome to the revolution. But apologies too, because there's a lot that you guys are gonna inherit. At the same time though, there's a lot of work that has been done. A lot of work that's been done, a lot with these folks up here, a lot of folks around the system. Hey, Judge Thorne's here.
Judge Thorne is?
Yeah, a lot of advocacy that's been going on with Judge Thorne as well. That it took a long time for us to get here, to this point where counties are now realizing, yes, we have to do the Indian Child Welfare Act. Yes, we definitely are not doing as much as we should. So, welcome to the field. You definitely now have a family here if you're working in tribal social work. If you're working with a county who is going to be working with tribes, make it a point to introduce yourself to the tribal social workers. Make it a point to introduce yourself to Angie, to anybody here, to the folks that you're going to, because they're going to want to know who you are, because you're working with their children. You're going to be going into the homes of their families. So make it a point to introduce yourself, exchange some words, like what Trish was saying earlier. Get to know who we are before you really need us, kind of thing, right? So that's where that engagement piece comes in. Exactly. So so this little slide here represents all the different agencies that we're coming from. So on the next slide, I'm going to jump into my little state speech that I have to follow. And then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of the Indian Child Welfare Act, what you're expected to know, and some of the other things. And we'll have a little case vignette and open for questions. So that hopefully this will be more of a dialogue. Just really want to figure out how we can best serve you guys coming up into, or you folks, coming into the new, into your new line of work. So as this statement here, the mission of California Department of Social Services is to serve, aid, and protect needy and vulnerable children and adults in ways that strengthen and preserve families, encourage personal responsibility, and foster independence. The Office of Tribal Affairs is within that California Department of Social Services, and our vision is to cultivate informed participation and trusting relationships. Y'all can read it there. Mission statement, grounded in meaningful tribal consultation. Values, respect for tribal sovereignty, integrity, transparency, solution-focused. We understand that the current state of things is not where we want it to be. A lot of work needs to change. A lot of work needs to happen. So one way to do that is for the state to issue what's called all county letters. And you have those in your resources. I shared some of those with Tamara. And unfortunately, you as new social workers come into a county system, you're not going to have time to read those. Unfortunately, you should make time to read them, but oftentimes, as workers, as a former worker myself, it was very difficult to manage all the incoming information, also with trying to manage the caseload, and also making sure that you're doing your utmost to follow the Indian Child Welfare Act. So the best thing to do is get your family around you. Connect, talk, make sure that you guys know what's going on. Hey, a new ACL just came out. Did you read about it? No, not really, but can you tell me a little bit about it? Just share what's going on. But the best way to actually figure that out, you don't need state guidance for that. Talk to your tribal social workers. Talk to the tribal representatives. Because oftentimes, we are finding that it's the tribes that are having to do the education to the counties. It shouldn't be like that, but as of right now, it kind of still is. So please make sure you're connecting with a tribal social worker. On the next slide, we're going to talk about the ICWA field liaisons. ICWA field liaisons are here for you social workers, tribal social workers, even for the state and the tribes as well. So we have 4 ICWA field liaisons, and their primary responsibility is to strengthen relationships, because we know we can't do this job without relationships. It's all about relationships. It's all about figuring out how we can do things better. So one of the 4 components of that ICWA field liaison is to strengthen relationships, provide technical assistance, collect and report data, and provide training. We're basically here to answer any questions that you have about the Indian Child Welfare Act. I heard a question earlier today about, well, what if about an out-of-state tribe that I'm trying to get a hold of, they didn't call me back? Call the Office of Tribal Affairs. Call your local ICWA field liaison, because oftentimes we have already heard that problem from another county, and we found another way to get in touch with that tribal social worker, because maybe the federal registry is wrong, because that has to, turnover happens, shift happens. I said the right word. Shift happens. And yeah, sometimes you don't have the correct contact information. So you let us know, and then we can let the BIA know, and then we can get all that contact information up to date. It is amazing how contact information, just phone numbers, can totally change how we do the job. Everybody here, most people here have my personal cell phone that they can text me, and they do. Hey, you didn't get this to me in right on time. Okay, I'll get that right over to you. But that's what you should be expecting here if you're doing tribal social work or county social work and working with tribes. You're going to be called. You're going to be connected with. And if tribes are connecting with you, that's showing that they're trusting you, right? That's showing that, okay, we can ask this person a question, and we're going to count on them to give us the right response. So please, I know there's boundaries that you're taught in social work and things like that. Those get kind of blurred when you start working in social work in tribal communities. It's different. You got to look at the job a bit differently. And for folks who are non-tribal, we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. And maybe I'll just save that for later. Save that for later. All right. So this ICWA field liaisons. On the next slide, here are the regional ICWA field liaisons. Way up north, we have Conrad Croy, also known as CC. He's working with those counties and tribes up there. In the north central, we have Alicia Gutierrez, who's out of Sacramento County. Bea Arellano, a former San Diego County social worker, is now in the Central Valley. We call it the South Central area. And then another San Diego County social worker who was also in the Indian Specialty Unit, Patty Martinez, who has been on the job about 2 weeks now. Patty, is that right? So give her some time, and then go ahead and feel free to flood her with your calls and emails. But she's just jumping on the OTA field liaison path. And my responsibility is to make sure that they can do their job effectively and making sure that there's no other issues that come in their way as I try to manage the 4 ICWA field liaisons. And those are all the tribes there. On the next slide, these are the 5 major provisions of the Indian Child Welfare Act. This is what you need to know. Now, this is just what's written down in paper. It's something totally different to actually be out there in the field and doing it. And hopefully we can provide you with some of that information. So we all have taken a piece of these 5 major provisions, and I drew the short straw, so I got inquiry and notice. So inquiry and notice is that one area that has the most rate of ICWA appeals. So we're not getting it done correctly. On the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about inquiry. Inquiry is simply just asking that question, right? Rather than ask the question, here's a suggestion. If you are American Indian or Alaska Native, or if you believe you may be affiliated with an Indian tribe, there are additional services available to you. Rather than ask the question, hey, do you happen to be from a tribe? It's been found that if this is stated, then it gets to a different part of the family's ability to actually share if they want to have an ICWA case or not. So there are some times where families will not want to openly share right away that they may be from a tribe, because maybe auntie works at the tribal's office, or maybe uncle is the chairperson. So there's some hesitancy there. But if it's framed like this, some research is suggesting that the family will be more open to accepting of the services. If we all have the understanding that the Indian Child Welfare Act is the gold standard of social work, that there's no better way to do social work, we want to make sure that all the families that we come in contact with can be protected under the Indian Child Welfare Act. Every child is an Indian child until proven otherwise. If you meet the case like that, and you get wide open with it, then hopefully we can protect more children under this gold standard of social work law. Unfortunately, you're going to get pushback from supervisors, managers, deputy directors, and directors on doing that, because there's a lot of fiscal issues that come into place with this. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. So inquiry, if there is reason to believe the child is an Indian child, the court, the county child welfare department, and probation departments have an affirmative and continuing duty, that thing's underlined intentionally, to make further inquiry, determine Indian status as soon as practical possible at any particular time. So, key words in there, reason to believe. What does that mean? What's reason to believe, and there's also the reason to know. What's the difference between that? To believe and to know. Because some people's beliefs, they know their beliefs, right? But in this term, to believe is like, okay, I think so. But to know, you know that this child is an Indian child. Yeah, I'll ask some more questions. Yeah, I'll put them on the spot. Okay, I'll keep doing that. So I'm getting coaching from behind me. So it doesn't, okay, this is a good question. When should a county start asking this question? At what point? Yes?
When the referral is called in.
Yes, that's the first particular point, at the hotline, yes? When the referral is called in, the reporting party makes that call. The person answering the call should be saying, is the family happen to be from a tribe? Do you know if there's are they eligible for membership? Or they state this, and that the reporting party will share that. Now, yes, candy for her. Now, thankfully here in San Diego County, they have been doing this inquiry for quite a while now, and actually has really led the movement to make sure that this is being done. Now it's a matter of just like policy and paperwork that we're trying to get worked on. Whereas other parts of the state, they've never even heard of ICWA a lot of times. They have no idea. Yeah, you're laughing, Joanna, but that does happen. There are some folks that are like, wait, what do we got to do? Why should we do it? It's not even a court case. Why should we even ask the question? right? So there's a lot of education that needs to happen. And a lot of times, since you guys are here in this forum and have got some education, you're going to be the ones having to educate your supervisors often. So but do so tactfully. And maybe after you pass probation, because I got another story about that later on. All right, so you want to make status of inquiry clear in your petition, noticing, and reports. And this is an ongoing process. So it doesn't only happen in the front right when you answer the phone. It should happen when? When it becomes, when it gets passed to that investigating worker, when it goes to the jurisdiction disposition, when it goes to a continuing, when it goes to adoptions. At every point this case transfers hands, you as a social worker taking that case, the first thing you should be looking at is, has ICWA been even asked? And what is that, what is the status of that right now? Because then if it's in your lap, it's your responsibility, right? What else do I want to say? Oh, it was already mentioned this last bullet about if a child is from multiple tribes, you want to make sure that you're asking every single tribe that child could possibly be a part of. We do know, like I said, the Federal Registry is sometimes inaccurate. So, but the legal mandate is that you have to still notice what's in the Federal Registry. And then if we find that there's a different contact information, you will also contact and put that information there as well. So inquiry is just asking the question. Noticing is actually filling out all that paperwork and sending it out with the little green cards and making sure that the tribe is aware of it. When there is that call to the hotline, that should actually start, if there's an investigating worker, that investigating worker should be calling the tribe so that they can go out and conduct the investigation alongside the tribe. Having co-investigations, that you're both collaborating to make sure that this child is getting the most possible protection under the Indian Child Welfare Act. This is something that has taken a long time for counties to accept and understand, and for the state to kind of also to accept and understand. Yes. And there are protocols and policies that individual counties have created. Thankfully, San Diego County is one of the first to create that protocol. It took about 5 years or so for us to get all together around the table to do it. And it was hard work. And we were arguing a lot. Yeah, a lot of hustle. But it brought us together. We could all come around the same table and figure out how to get this done. So I don't think I said it, but yeah. With the state for about 4 years now. Prior to that was with San Diego County Indian Special Unit for about 8-9 years. Prior to that was up in the Bay working at American Indian Child Resource Center with Mary Trimble Norris, who she'll still say I'm her intern, working as a social worker there. And for me, I had seen, even as a little kid, the injustice that was going on, how children are just being lost within the system. And it's like you can't really stand by and allow that to happen when you know that there's a problem. So in my mind, it was like, well, what if I start working within the system to try to figure out what's happening, right? So currently, got my experience with the county, got me a really good lens on how to do that, got my experience with the nonprofit status, and now currently the lenses of the state, and putting that all with the lenses of coming from a non-federally recognized tribe. Makes me see things in a different kind of way. Makes me see things and reminds me that the system that we're working in was used in order to, what do I want to say? Am I wearing my state hat right now? Let's just say it. Was used in order to try to eliminate tribes. It was used to try to assimilate. It was used to intentionally remove children and place them outside of their family. Intentionally to try to remove them from their culture so that would affect tribal sovereignty. And unfortunately, those practices are still happening today. So it's going to be up to all of you folks coming into this system to help make this better. It is going to be challenging. You're going to be frustrated. But we can do it, right? coming together like this is really important. Coming together, sharing ideas, connecting, realizing that the extended family that you have here all has that same purpose as well. And we'll just keep on keeping on until that disproportionality rate goes down, until there's no tribal children in care. So, inquiry and notice, vital, very important. Asking the question, making sure you have the correct contact information. If you don't know the correct contact information, please notify a ICWA field liaison. We're here for you. This is why this office was created, because tribes were saying, state, you're not doing this correctly. You need a whole separate office in order to get this done. All right, so the office was created. Now you need some people to be out in the field to make sure that social workers are getting help. Okay, so now it exists. We only have 4, which is not enough. So the more work you give us, the more we could advocate for more positions until, hopefully, we work ourselves out of the job, like Brother was saying earlier today. So yeah, I think that's all I want to say about inquiry and notice. Next slide, I believe, is Sonny D with the active efforts. All right.
So, thank you. I got nervous all of a sudden because I knew it was getting close to me. I train all the time, and I still get nervous all the time. So, anyways, I just wanted to touch on the word resilience really quick because that's been going around a lot today, and I understand some people are sensitive to that word and they do not like it. I, however, like to point out for me personally, that word does mean a lot. It means that just as the trauma that passed through, intergenerational trauma has passed through our blood, passed through our genes, so has that resilience, so has that strength, and so has that power and drive and all that our ancestors were. All that, everything that they were is why I'm here today. That's why I'm here to stand in front of you today to share this. And this work is not easy, and I'm a big crybaby, and I'm on the verge of it right now, but I'm going to try to hold it together because this is important and we need you to hear it. So, active efforts. I'm going to look at my little notes here. So, just as I said, active efforts is if you go into it with a mindset, with a resilience framework, you've got to understand that, like, you saw the movie last night, Blood Memory, and how children were taken away from their families for no reason. The disproportionality rates are through the roof. It's still happening today. And active efforts is a tool that we can use, or let me start out by saying this. By law, it's necessary for social workers to get it right, to make sure active efforts happens. It's a preventative measure to make sure, to hopefully prevent the breakup of Native American families. So with the active efforts mindset, it's about having a partnership and taking equitable ownership of the work and the outcomes. So, like I said, county workers has the responsibility to comply with ICWA, but it's the tribes that hold all the expertise of the family and everything that their community, the culture, the history, and the connections of the family. So that partnership, it doesn't allow for the work to rest on one set of shoulders. What active efforts means is to have meaningful consultation with the tribes, to seek the tribes' expertise and getting to know them, to connect with them. As Donald was talking about, making that, building those relationships and reaching out to the tribes to not to do the work for you, but to walk with them and talk with them to help go over what's needed. So, okay. So, active efforts is intended to remedy the effects of the forced relocation, the loss of lands, the loss of culture, the loss of identity. It's a remedial aspect, and it's something that needs to be done to, like I said, prevent the removal and breakup. And let me switch over to this so I could talk a little bit about what that looks like. Let me ask a question to the crowd. What's the difference between reasonable efforts and active efforts? Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
So, reasonable effort would be like, here's a list of parenting classes in your area and a phone number and phone numbers, and then active efforts would be like helping the parents or the parents call and make appointments with them.
Okay, so it's doing a little more, right? It's a little more hand holding, right? It's helping them to overcome the barriers and help them to achieve success. What's important to understand is, just like you said, there's many different reasons that brought the family to your attention. So handing them a list of something for their case plan to say, here you go, do this, go get some counseling, call these places, that's not enough. Active efforts is going to be to help them fill out a form, provide the transportation, communicate with the tribe and the family, put together CFT meetings that incorporates all the family, the tribes, the community members that maybe it's cultural, maybe it's educational, all leverage all the strengths that the families already have to help the families to be more successful in their case plan. So, active efforts should be done and according to the tribe's prevailing social and cultural conditions. Oh, I didn't see that. Yes, ma'am.
I like the simple definition for active efforts that I've used in my trainings is reasonable efforts are you look at your computer, you use your mouse, and make a phone call. Active efforts is you put the mouse down, grab your purse, and leave the office.
Oh, yeah, there you go. It's action. It's more active, right? You get out there and get her done. That's exactly it. And what often comes up prior to the core training that became mandatory in 2017 for social workers, we often had social workers that were very seasoned sitting in the classroom when it wasn't mandatory, wanted to know, and it says, isn't active efforts, isn't it hand-holding, isn't that enabling the families? Instead of enabling, I see it more as empowering the families, right? You don't know what brought them to your attention to begin with. So the first step is to look at some of those, find out what those barriers and challenges were that brought them there, right? And help them to overcome those. And what does that look like? When you're in a state of trauma, especially with the idea that your children are going to be taken from you or never to return to you, you've got to think about the hardships, the trauma, the blinders that get put on once we get into in a traumatized state, right? We can't think clearly. There's a lot of things that are going on, and also when it comes to on reservations, there's lack of transportation. We don't have buses that come to my res. Right? There's dirt roads, and if you're lucky, you get phone signal wherever you go. So there's all different types of challenges. And so it's not enough to just hand out those resources. It's important to, especially as you think about the traumas that come to the family, all the stuff that we've seen since last night and throughout, all this pain, all this hardship, all of this stuff that's going on, that's what what's showing up to you. All of the generations of that pain and suffering is showing up to you in that moment. So to keep that in mind, and the idea of getting your kid taken away, that's added, like an added bonus. So don't look at it as a burden. Look at it as a gift that you can give, because we all came into social work to help change lives and to make a difference in people's lives. And this is one of the greatest ways you can provide that for our family, is by providing the active effort, sitting down with them, helping, taking them, giving them transportation, just speaking with the tribe and the families, find out what culturally relevant services that they would like. They're being connected to your family, to your land, to your people, the learning of language. All of that are resilience factors. Those are the things that can help to help people heal, to help what we heard last night in the movie Blood Memory. They talked about having that identity, knowing who they are. That in itself is a resilience factor that could help get us through to the next day sometimes. And with whatever the work that you put forth makes it worth it, because sometimes these families show up in a hopeless situation, not knowing what to do, who to turn to, and it seems impossible. But you providing those efforts, that additional hand holding, that additional way of showing the family the way, then a lot of times families will catch on and will be willing to take the steps for themselves. They will be empowered to learn and to grow and to do more. There are many success stories of families that have been able to prevent the removal, or that have been reunited because of great social workers that took the time to go above and beyond and do the active efforts needed for that family. So from the Welfare and Institutions Code, there's a list of active efforts. Make sure you conduct a comprehensive assessment, identify appropriate services to help the parents overcome barriers, including actively assisting parents in obtaining those services, inviting tribal representatives. As much as tribes want to help, we do want to help. And there's a couple things I want to say about that. We do want to help, and by law, it is the responsibility of the county workers to make sure it happens, right? And another thing, as we hear oftentimes that it's a lot of work if you get an ICWA case. No one wants an ICWA case because there's a lot of work involved in all this stuff, right? But when you're teaming and engaging and partnering with your tribes, trust me, we want our kids more than anything, right? So the tribal partners that you engage with, that's going to be the key to help keep that family together, right? So make sure you're inviting the tribal representatives. Make sure that you're reaching out and finding out who those tribal people are, even before you have an ICWA case. Look around in your county, find out, what tribes are in your area, and do that outreach because it's so important. Okay. Yeah, Angie, she's with the Indian Health Council, and she's your gal. Another question? Yes, ma'am.
I heard that as well. We hear about the enabling. You're just enabling them. It's the opposite.
Yes.
If you do not help, then you've enabled them to say, well, they don't care. I'm just going to go back and do what I'm doing. So the next time a social worker says that to you, say, you don't know what enabling is. For real, that's what it is. Because I'm an addict. I know what enabling is.
Right? Yeah. It's just important to work diligently to help them. The way I like to tell the trainees when I train is imagine it's your child. Imagine it's your niece or nephew. Imagine it's your grandchild. Is it enabling then when you have to count on another worker to make sure they get active efforts done? Is that enabling then? No, you would want anything possible to happen to make sure that that family gets what the best services so that they can stay together, right?
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing about it. I think the other thing it really makes me think of is that as social workers, we came into the job to do the work.
Right.
The reasonable efforts burn so many people out. You just are, having to see so many missed opportunities to truly connect and engage. So here you have a law telling you can tell your supervisor, sorry, I got to do this. I have to take the time to do this. And it's really an opportunity to do that work that fills us up, that makes us feel like full people who are connected in community. And there was a comment last night about people, throwing out tribal names to extend their case. Well, guess what that tells you? That they care about keeping their children.
Absolutely.
And they are grasping at straws to support their family. And
Absolutely.
so you should see that and you should buy into it.
Absolutely.
And you should say, now I'm going to work harder for this family, right? And so I just, everybody can, of course it's a lot of work, but shoot, you work for the county. It's a lot of work.
Absolutely.
So anyway, just thank you for really showing us what that can look like.
Right. So as Karen says, with a tribal partner, that it'll make the work easier. Another thing that is important to point out, active effort, or ICWA in general, is the gold standard for all child welfare practice. Active efforts is something that can be done for all families, right? When you look at the model of ICWA, it's the gold standard for all child welfare practice. And when you begin to understand the history, which I think this symposium has done a great job doing, is kind of giving you an introduction to a lot of the atrocities, a lot of the history, the pain, the trauma, the resilience, the thriving Indigenous folks that are still here. You'll begin to understand that it's worth it. And like you said, we all came into this to help, and it takes a lot of work. The unfortunate part too is we understand that there's too many caseloads, there's a lot going on, which kind of prevents us from doing those things. And we just need more. I mean, if we follow the law, right? If we adhere to the law, and then we're going to be okay. So make sure other examples of active efforts: a diligent search for extended family members, culturally appropriate family preservation strategies and services, keeping siblings together whenever possible, supporting regular visits, identifying community resources, and actively assisting the Indian child's parents, or when appropriate, the child's family, and utilizing and accessing those resources as we discussed, monitoring the progress and participation in services. Consider alternative ways to address the needs of the Indian child's parents, and where appropriate, the family. So be creative if the optimum services aren't available. That's the beauty of working with your tribal partners, is that we are very creative in coming up with ways that we could achieve the same goals. Maybe talk therapy is not for that child and family. Maybe it's a talking circle. Maybe it's journaling, maybe some of the stuff we heard earlier today. There's many different ways that the same thing can be accomplished, and not just the cookie cutter approach. Once you get all of these active efforts and you do them for a family, sometimes you offer them. Sometimes you offer them and document them, and you work with the tribe and you talk to the tribe, and the family still doesn't follow through. Unfortunately, that happens. Maybe they're not ready at that point, but that doesn't mean they're not ever going to be ready. They're not never going to be ready, right? So make sure you actively engage with the tribe and the families and all of their supports, and to actively hold their hand through this traumatic, scary process to hopefully prevent the removal and breakup of the family. And if that part has already happened, go above and beyond to make sure that you can bring those children back together to help them maintain or establish their identity of who they are, so that they could have a better chance to not repeat that cycle. Do we have any questions? All right, moving on. Whew. Who's next?
Thank you, Sunny. Something about reasonable efforts, active efforts. I really feel bad for families that only get reasonable efforts. Can you imagine when you're out there doing your social work and say, oh, well, you're a non-tribal family, so you only get reasonable efforts from me. It just doesn't sit right. So ICWA really is the gold standard. My name is Karen, and I have been a tribal social worker for different jobs for about 30 years here in San Diego County. I'm from the Rincon Indian Reservation, and recently retired, but that's kind of, I flunked that retirement. Still doing things because it's a passion. This job and what you've chose to go into, it's a passion of yours. And as social workers, do you all believe that people can change? Yes, right? So keep that in mind when you're out in there and you're interviewing or assessing families for placement. So we're going to talk about placement, if we can, there you go. And when the best placement is in the home, and hopefully the active efforts that you've done have prevented this child from being removed. Because you have to do one thing about active efforts, you have to document those active efforts constantly in your reports. And hopefully you're documenting what you did prior to any removal. That's going to be very important, that you're trying to keep the family together and doing active efforts to keep the family together, because eventually if the child is removed, not eventually, but if the child has to be removed and now you have a court case, you're going to get a qualified expert witness, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And they're going to assess whether or not you provided those active efforts prior to any removal, and also active efforts throughout the case. So it's something that you really want to keep in mind throughout your social work. So in the Indian Child Welfare Act, the placement, there's 4 placement preferences. And if those active efforts have failed, then you have to remove, then you got to look at placement. And the first thing, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to turn my back to you to look at the power. It was on my phone, but it went out. If the child must be removed, children must be placed in the least restrictive setting with the family. And hopefully that is with family. So you have to really assess the situation in family and look at extended family. And if the tribe has its own preference for that placement, you need to acknowledge that and do everything that you can to make that happen. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of tribal foster homes, and there's a reason for that. We live on tribal lands, which are federal lands, and if there's a crime or there's something happen, you might have a federal record behind you. You might have a record that was 15, 20 years ago. But remember, you guys all shook your heads when I said, do you believe people can change, right? So if grandma or grandpa had a DUI 20 years ago, is that really a reason not to place that child with that family if grandpa's okay today and doesn't even drive anymore? So you really have to assess that. So you have to look at the tribe's placement preferences. If they have an extended family and if they want you to assess that family and for placement, then let's go along with that. Also, let me read this one. I can't read that far. A court may determine that good cause exists to deviate from that placement. And sometimes, and most of the time, in my experience, it's been because there wasn't an available foster home, a tribal foster home. And so sometimes that happens that you have to go outside of that foster home. But hopefully, like we talked about earlier today with the youth panel, you can set that foster home up with resources, with the tribe. Make sure that they are in a connection and a relationship together to help reunify. You have to keep reunification always the forefront, always the goal, always the finish line. Of course, you have to do concurrent planning, which we'll talk about too, but always keep reunification in mind, in the forefront there. So the foster placement preferences with the Indian Child Welfare are what? 1, a member of the child's extended family or family, immediate family, right? And is it your place to determine whose family to that family? No. See a lot of heads shaking. No, because we have extended family, and if we say that that's my extended family, it doesn't have to be by blood. It doesn't need to be explained. It's who they consider their extended family, and that's where you should be placing that child. The second is a foster home that is licensed and approved by the Indian tribe. And so I think we do have one agency here in San Diego that's up and coming that does do some foster placement. And Linda, can you tell us what the name of that agency is? I can never say their name. Yeah, I can't say it. Let Sunny say it because it's a, yeah.
Let Sunny butcher it. It's I think it's like Pachaman oak tree, or what is it? Tribal oak tree. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so they're a new agency here in San Diego that is starting to license foster homes. So there's another resource for you guys. Number 3 is the Indian foster home that is already licensed by the tribe, because some tribes do license their own foster homes. So again, you have that advocate with the tribe to help you with the work that you're doing. And that's why I don't get why people say that ICWA is more work. You get an advocate, you get a tribal advocate that's going to help you with transportation, with placement, with visitations, with court, with everything. You have, it's even a higher level of a CASA, really. So really make those connections today and throughout your careers. And 4th is an institution for children that, again, is approved by the tribe. What questions do we have about placement? I did a really good job, you guys.
We have a question over here.
Okay. We had a hand over here.
Can you talk
Joanna.
about the fact that we have like tribal RFA and best practices around that? Because I know that some counties have struggled on best practices and teaming with our tribes when it comes to approving like tribal RFA.
Okay, yeah, Angie's going to actually cover that one.
Thanks, Karen. Joanna, that is going to be something I'll be speaking to in just a second. So I want to just acknowledge this moment for me, that these are my mentors, and this is like a full circle professional bucket list for me. I'm going 7 years in tribal social work, and these are the women and gentlemen that have brought me to the practice that I've had the honor to take to the families and support and collaborate with. So that being said, I am also going to just do a quick plug that I'm non-tribal but Indigenous, and I'm doing tribal work. So I'll have an opportunity to also talk on that towards the end of the presentation if there are questions in that regard. But sticking to the PowerPoint, and I'm not going to stand up because I have a bad knee and I'm nervous and anything's possible at that point. When we're talking about concurrent planning, right, we're always talking about being prepared for the what if, the possibility, right? So we're talking about, how can we help families but still be prepared, right? So we hope for the best, but we're prepared for the worst. And so in that being said, in our collaboration, we're always talking about being prepared in the sense that when we're collaborating with tribes, we have relatives, we have an insight to what's going on the back burner with our families and with our community. So if we have a post-tox baby and we know that baby's not going to be discharged for a couple of weeks, our concurrent plan, our plan B, is going to start talking with that tribal social worker and like, who's a possibility that could be a placement? Who's going to be someone that we can help set up this family that maybe we don't even have to bring straight into custody, but we can do a transition of care, and then we can set up a case plan, and then we can get mom an inpatient, so we can circumvent some of these higher punitive systematic methods and start focusing on our family's strength and ability to heal, right? Because we keep talking about trauma-informed and the trauma impact, but I want to just take a moment to acknowledge when we're putting focus on that, we also have to acknowledge that there's a brain development gap for these families from the most fundamental years of their life when they're supposed to be nurtured and cared for and loved. When it's building their strength and confidence and sense of security on that foundation, it's getting it's a gap. It's either not there at all or it's filled with the opposite, right? And so their bucket's always overfilled with stress and fear, and they're always surviving in crisis mode. And the reality of that is that they don't know that they're surviving in crisis anymore, because that's just their normal. And it's normal in their house, and it's normal in their community, and for a lot of people, that's just life. And so the reality is that when you come into their home and we're talking about like, this is unsafe, what you're trying to create that change is what feels unsafe to them, because there's no platform in that for them to draw from. And so when we're talking about concurrent planning, just to circle back, we're talking about being prepared for that next plan with the most minimal impact to that family, and still allowing for that developmental connection for that baby, that they're still getting that love and they're still getting that strength coming through. So whether it's a baby or an adult, or it's a parent healing from their developmental gap, right? So that's where we're talking about, don't wait until you have that letter from the judge to say, hey, we have the exigency now to move forward on this. Don't wait, because all you're doing is creating more impact to these families. And if we believe we can change, and we believe these families have the strength to heal, then we should be early intervention. We should be getting in there before waiting for that, trauma to happen. So the other part I want to highlight on the Plan B is that we're fortunate in our community. Our clinic, Indian Health Council, is actually approved as an assessment center. So part of that also means acknowledging is that we don't have to take them out of what their normal is and visiting their clinics and their communities and their doctors to take them to another foreign location to assess them to be safe, that there's not an underlying issue that's happening. We can take them to their family doctor and have them checked, and we can have the family member visit them there and connect with them. And so it's really, again, we're minimizing impact. We're showing relational faces. We have a culturally appropriate environment where they're able to just connect, right? And that stress factor is going down. And so that's another thing for all of us that are, I'm one of them. I can be guilty of it too, where we're very literal and we're line item readers. Like, I got to get A to B to C, because otherwise I'm not going to make it to E. We got to break that habit. We're very well trained in being alphabetically ordered, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You got to ditch it. You got to start thinking outside the box. You got to start coloring outside the lines, because when we're working with community, there was no lines. We put the lines on them, right? And so just acknowledging that too. And so also allowing for resources, right? Again, if we're not waiting for it to happen, we're looking for those resources. We're acknowledging those resources, what's going to be the best fit. If we have urban natives that are not necessarily on the reservation and they feel more acclimated to go into places that are in the city, then do it. Sign it up, line it up, but you still keep the tribe involved. If you're talking about, reservation, and we're talking about territories, you got to work with that. So again, we're always talking about that healing. That's the end game. I think we keep hearing that over and over again. We see a lot of common themes and patterns, because a lot of people are not going to walk away internalizing it the first time, right? How many of you turn on your computer and remember how to get back to where you left that document on whatever hard drive it's at? You just got to keep doing it to remember what hard drive it's at before you start being able to do it without thinking about it. So that's what we're talking about, and that's why we keep explaining things in the context to what it's intended for in that particular space. But there's a lot of patterns in it. It ultimately falls down to collaboration and communication. So getting back on point, the last thing I really want to talk about that is less familiar for the people in this space is the tribal customary adoption, the TCA. That's one of the very important and very elements to families that has now been acknowledged as being one of those steps in moving in the right direction, is honoring tribe and culture and that healing practice. Is instead of just going straight adoption and cutting them off and separating them from their community and separating them and closing that door and locking that file away, in the state of California, we could do a tribal customary adoption order where they're able to stay connected to their tribes. The tribe can have a voice in what they want, that family that's willing to step up and be that foundation for this child if need be. and keep them coming back home, whether it's ceremony, whether it's traditional foods, whether it's regalia, whether it's, auntie and uncle visits, whether it's visits with mom and dad with supervision. Just because they weren't able to be mom and dad to be primary doesn't mean they can't be mom and dad to have a place in their heart. So we still have to honor that in recognizing that community and relatives don't go away just because we sign a piece of paper. And visit. Yes, absolutely. And so the one part that Joe was asking about, Joanna was talking about, some of the abilities that the tribe can partner with the county is tribally approving a home. If we absolutely have to go in and do that intervention of taking a child and putting them in a different placement, the tribe has the ability to go out and assess the home, wherever that home is, in regards to their child. And I keep saying child because I want that to really resonate with you, because sometimes we get social workers who are like, well, mom's Native, and mom said that we don't want our tribe there. Well, it's not up to mom, right? We love mom, we want to help mom, we want to help dad, but we're here for our children. And so at the end of the day, I just want to also throw that plug up there to take that home with you, whether mom or dad says that they don't want to be part of it. It's up to the tribe. So so going back to TCA, we can tribally approve homes to make sure that we can say that we're comfortable, we're okay with this, we're taking responsibility in agreeing to this, and then the agency has to honor that. The agency is then only responsible for the live scan and stuff like that, the back end parts of it. But at the end of the day, that's where we're able to circumvent some of those county barriers that would see certain cultural lifestyles or practices or just normals as a concern. Maybe a little land art, maybe a couple of res dogs, I don't know, you name it. But some people get scared for the most random stuff. And as experts to our communities, we can say, you know what, we're putting a stamp on this, our child's safe, we just need you to do this back end stuff for us. And so that's just a quick insight, and if I said it too fast or if you have a lot of deep dive questions, please refer to your local internet, because there's documents on all of this through the Office of Tribal Affairs. And from there, I'm gonna pass it off to the next person, Miss Linda.
I just want to piggyback off of some of the concurrent planning, like Angie's saying, and just like, the film, I apologize, Sandy, I wasn't here last night, to watch it. I've seen it several times. But when you do concurrent planning, I'm just going to go into a case really quick. We had one where the mother, had lost her child, and she did really good, got her child back, and then she relapsed years later. And we couldn't find a home for this child. We're fortunate in San Diego County because we have an Indian specialty unit. And God bless them, because they had to put up with me, Karen. I mean, it took us a long time to come up with that protocol because we wanted it a certain way. As tribes down here in Southern California, we knew those are our children. We know where they want them to go. We know how to help their parents out. But this case in particular was a child that did kind of have a special need. And when his mom relapsed, she had drank so much she was sick. The county worker was like, Linda, please help me find a tribal placement. And I was like, oh man, where am I going to do it? And I remember my cousin saying, if you ever need a placement, I want one of our Indian children. So this morning you heard my cousin, she's sitting over there talking about how she has such a hard time with the schools. Well, she took that child on. I always wonder what would happen if we didn't find a tribal member. It'd be like with Sandy's story. So many stories that we hear all the time about them getting taken away, and when they come back, they're even more troublesome. And this little guy, I watched him just grow. I placed him with my cousin over there, and she didn't just have to fight the school, but the sad part is, after he was placed with her, mom started getting sicker and sicker. And to the point, she's gone now. Like she said this morning, she passed away. But during that time when she was sick, she would miss visits with him. And so the county's saying, well, she missed a visit, so we're not going to let her have visits. I watched my cousin tell him, you know what, I don't care what you say. He's going to see his mom anytime he can, because I don't want him to ever think that I kept him from his mom. She took him to the hospital on her deathbed. She made sure that he has older siblings. She made sure that their family is still connected. You know, and that little boy he's living on our reservation now. You know, and he's able to see his great-grandpa, his family. But I always think if we listen to the second social worker that they passed that case on to, and she listened to what she said, that little boy would never have seen his mom. He would have wondered, you know, where did my mom go? You know, yeah, and did she love me? You know, why did she just leave me here? But no, his siblings are really close to my cousin, and that's the best of both worlds, and that's what we're talking about with this concurrent planning. Let's plan it ahead of time. Let's look and think outside the box, like Angie's saying. It's not like you don't have to be a scientist to figure that out. It's something I always wondered when I went into this field, you know, and I don't have a degree, but my heart and my passion is our kids. My thing is, I always thought I would never want to go into somebody else's home that's not my culture and take their children away and then tell them, you know, this is what you do, because I don't know. I don't know that culture, but I know mine. And ours is, you know what? We have so much family. Even though we're not related by blood, like you heard all day, we're related because we're being Native American. All of us right here, you know, we travel in the same group and have for years, especially me and Karen, because we're the older ones on here. You know, I was young when I started this job. You know, I was so young starting this job, and I grew old doing this job, you know, and we look forward to, like, retiring. Karen's smart. She retired already. But anyway, I just want to go into really quick. Oh, I'm sorry. Bib?
Hi. I just wanted to say to those county workers, to ICWA workers and the non-native social workers, at one point, they told this sick mother who is 40 years old, dying of cirrhosis of the liver, just trying to see her baby, said, you need to call me by 3 o'clock on Wednesday, and if you don't, you won't have a visit the next day. No idea. The next day she called me, the social worker, and said, Mom never called before 3. There's no visit. And I said, before 3? That's the end of your guys' business day? Because that's not the end of mine. If you don't hear from Mom, the visit should just go on. If Mom doesn't show up, we'll cross that bridge. You still need to pick up this baby who's expecting to see his mom every Wednesday. That was his appointment. You still are expected to take him out there. Mom might show up at the last minute. Mom might get sick at the last minute. And I think that was the hardest part for me, was to fight the social workers to make that visit happen. There was too many gatekeepers. She had to call before 3. Well, she was up all night sick, and she didn't wake up until 3:30. And she called, and they got a message at 4, and she wanted the visit. But she didn't call before 3, and that was the rule they gave her. So when you're think of things like that. The kid is, like they said, the child's the one that's gonna hurt. When I showed up on Wednesday, he's like, why are you here? After school, I would pick him up. Why are you here? I have an appointment with my mom. So it's just, they know. Even though you think the kids might not know, they're just going to miss the visit, they know. So just take that in note. Don't make it hard for those sick parents or for any of the parents. You know, don't put rules and stipulations like that. 3 o'clock, that's not the end of my business day. The banks are still open at 3 o'clock. So just be more compassionate to those parents. Most Native parents have endured trauma, and we're trying to heal ourselves as we raise our children. We're still healing. Now our children are trying to heal because we weren't completely healed. So I just want to thank you for letting me speak, but be compassionate to those parents. Thank you.
Next slide, please, Mr. Anthony. Look, I'm going to read off here because Donald over here wrote all this up. And since he works for the state, he thinks he's the boss, but he's not. You know, he didn't learn the first time working in the Indian unit, you know, having to put up with this. He wanted to go higher. And the state's even worse off than the county, so I don't know. Yeah, he tried to tell us so I'm going to read what he wrote. Yeah, it's a QE. So this is on qualified Indian expert witness. If a foster care placement is being sought for an Indian child or parental rights are being terminated, it is the responsibility of the party seeking foster care or the TPR to obtain qualified expert witness testimony. Work with the child's tribe to identify a qualified expert witness. The qualified expert witness diminishes the risk of bias in the decision-making by the agency and testifies to the detriment of the child in remaining the parent or the Indian guardians based on the prevailing social and cultural standards of the tribe. If the tribe does not have a qualified Indian expert witness, begin recruitment early. The Judicial County of California Administrative Office of Court Center for Children, Families, Courts, Indian Programs has posted a list of individuals who are identified as qualified expert of ICWA purposes. That's the government's, the government's terminology of that. So how many of you guys know, have had to deal with a qualified Indian expert witness? Joanna, of course. Joanna's and Priscilla. And so that's why it's so important for all of you that are social workers to prove those active efforts that Sunny and Karen, that everybody talked a little bit, you've heard it all through the day from Judge Maisva also. Because if it's not written down and it's not documented, where that expert witness can see exactly those active efforts have been provided, it's not written, it didn't happen. And the reason I'm saying, because I do qualified Indian expert, I'm a qualified Indian expert witness, and I tell the county, you know what, I need to get that report. I need mom, dad, whoever's involved in the case, because I'm not going to just take your word for what you wrote on this report. I want to talk to the mom. I don't want to see her past history because I'm not going to punish her for her past history. What happened today? What happened today? Is that detriment still there for that child? You know, is there anything that you can do? So document it, just like the young lady, you know, answered the question. You know what, don't just give them a pamphlet. You know what, number one, I offered to take them down to be drug tested. 2, you know, all of no matter what you did to try to prevent that breakup of that Indian home, you need to document that. And unless it would cause serious emotional harm to those children, then that's enough proof to keep them out of the home. But you also have to talk with the tribal social workers. I'm going to take everything. A witness will take everybody's word into account. And the parents still have a right. Parents still have a right to say, you know what, this didn't happen. They wrote it this way, but let me tell you what happened. So you need to, when you're doing that and you're writing down and you're taking your notes, don't think that when we're coming in there, we're looking at them and say, oh yeah, they did that. Look at, they gave them a pamphlet. We're not going for it. Although there is some people that are labeled as qualified Indian expert witness, and we, like me and Karen, we call them rubber stamps. Because the county will hire them to go up against the one that the tribe wants, because their expert witness is going to rubber stamp what the county's saying. But the tribe has the right to say who they want as that qualified Indian expert witness, because they know what the tribe's customs and traditions are. They know what the tribe wants. They know what the tribe is able to provide. And if the tribe can't provide it for themselves, they know that they have like a local clinic, like Indian Health Council, I was gonna say Karen's program, but she's retired now. So Angie's program, like she was saying, the stuff that they have at that clinic we can take advantage of. So I just want to say that, you know what, you have to have that qualified Indian expert witness. So it's really important for you guys to document, because like I said, if it's not written, it didn't happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Linda. Yes, it's to eliminate that bias, right? We're trying to get that bias out of the system. Qualified expert witness is one way to do that. However, we're finding, not here, of course, but in different areas throughout the state, that they have as a QEW shopping, right? So counties are trying to find the qualified expert witness that's going to be in line with their way of thinking. That's rubber stamp. That's exactly the opposite of what the qualified expert witness statute was intended for. So, why is that happening? Well, that's a lesson for another day, I guess. But that's what we're trying. That's what we're trying to work against, right? But just to make you guys aware that this is happening. So if you are aware of that, there are numbers that you can call to report that, and that'll be coming up later. On the next slide, we're going to talk about the spirit of the law, because you have the letter of the law, the black and white letter of the law that we always argue about, which sometimes doesn't really get followed very much for some reason. But then you have the spirit of the law. And the spirit of the law is basically what was intended in the law, right? And the spirit of the law here, sorry, Miss Letton, I was going to come around here so I can see my notes here. That when a child is not from a federally recognized tribe, when the child is a descendant of a federally recognized tribe but not eligible for enrollment, or when the family is a Native American family but not a member of a tribe, or there are some times where there are federally recognized tribes that currently their membership is closed at the time. So if you look at it on paper, well, the child is not an enrolled member, but the child is eligible for enrollment. So that's the key part too. Is any child that's eligible for enrollment, that's what ICWA should apply. So the spirit of the law allows you to be able to utilize all the great benefits of the Indian Child Welfare Act if you don't specifically have it written down in paper that allows you to say, okay, this is an ICWA child. Luckily here in San Diego County, once again, a practice they've gone far above and beyond with is that within their court, Judge Espana has written out that she's gonna honor all spirit of law cases, which is really great. Well, y'all making fun of me back here? Is that what you're doing? Look at you. Look at you. Doing something. Anyway, it's cool. So County for Law gives the court the discretion to allow non-fully recognized tribes to participate in proceedings and make recommendations per WIC 306.6. So another way for you to expand the Indian Child Welfare Act to cover more kids in your care. So please make sure that you follow that. On the next slide, you're going to see the ICWA desk reference, which is a guide that has basically every single thing we said, also with specific terms, languages. I could email that to you. There's also a physical document that's take a little bit longer for me to send to you, but if you want that, I can give that to you. The next slide are tools about how to get the job done. So first, make sure you connect with your ICWA field liaisons. They want to hear from you. They want to hear what's going on. Please reach out to them, depending on wherever you end up within the county system. There are ICWA trainings, a plethora of them. Tribal Star, CTFC, California Tribal Families Coalition, JCC, Judicial Council of California. Social workers, if you find that the county that you have been employed by is not following the Indian Child Welfare Act, please report them. That is called the Social Worker Empowerment Hotline, right? We know that there are issues within our state and we want to fix those. We got to get them better. Tribal representatives, if you're finding that you're working a case and you've seen that a county is not following the Indian Child Welfare Act, please report that. And you'll see that actually the numbers are the same. The Social Worker Empowerment Hotline and the ICWA hotline are the same number. So the ICWA hotline has been around only a year now, a year and 5 months, and it's gathered a lot of significant data and really opened our eyes to go, oh, okay, yes, everything that tribe's been saying about this county is true. And the tribe's been saying about, wait, what do you mean they're writing orders to not allow a court or not allow a tribe to see their children? Like, wait, how is that possible? So there are still these types of practices that need to change. Next slide. We'll go back
to Angie about doing tribal work but being non-tribal. All right.
I think so. I have 5 minutes, so I'm going to kind of hit the bullets really quick. My first and foremost is always be your authentic self. That's something that will resonate. That's something where in a community where getting to know you is important. You know, the first time they meet you should be your authentic self, right? And this is a heart's work. So if you're coming into a community and you don't feel that connection, you're already overwhelmed and struggling with the law of the ask, then maybe this isn't the work for you with this community. It's that straightforward. And that's only because it's an injustice to you and it's a disservice to our families, because this really is a heart's work. And so remember to be your authentic self, and remember to ask questions. That's part of being authentic and growing, right? I didn't get here by assuming, and that's my next bullet point. I have the honor of also growing up in the community that I serve, and I've had the honor of also being able to extend myself to other areas in San Diego. So part of that is having that self-reflection. We talked about that as well, and also having that humility to acclimate to those environments, learn it, bring it into you, but don't acculturate it. It's not yours. You may be asked to join, you may be given the opportunity to participate, but always ask permission first. Always make sure that that's something that you have the ability to have the capacity to say that you had the honor, and it was given to you by a tribal member, a tribal community. And I want to acknowledge communication styles. We keep talking about communication, but we have, like over 100 people here, and I can guarantee you I don't talk like half the people here. My brain goes from like 5 to 5,000 in 2 seconds, and then I'm probably climbing a mountain and then jumping down the hill at the same time. So that reflects in my language, and I share that because there's labels for everything in social work, right? You know, we talk about family tree, that's what, a genogram, so I highlight that because communication styles are important. Our communities are intentional, they're purposeful, they listen. And so that also goes to what I want to share in one of the bullets is acknowledging the importance of storytelling. There's stories that need to be heard. There's stories that need to be heard because they're feeling you out and they want to know if you're safe to actually hear the rest of the information. And so don't sit behind your laptop, don't, put a time limit like, hey, we have an hour to meet. I have 20 minutes for each kid, don't put a timer on me. And so that's also, I want to highlight communication, yes, but know your community's communication style as well as know your community. Know when the board is changing. Know what tribal traditions are happening. Know when they have their ceremonies. Know the difference between a Sundance and a powwow. Like, they're different for different tribes because they have different sovereignties. You're talking about a government to government relationship. I'm not going to go to Brazil and act like I'm speaking to Mexico. It's not the same, right? So we have to recognize that within our own nation. And so also acknowledging those different communication styles. And also, there's no big feelings when you get big talk, right? Don't get your feelings hurt. Learn to take a joke. Sometimes it's joking with you because they like you. Sometimes they're joking because they don't. But you got to let it roll off at the same time because that's how you're building trust. That's how you're getting buy-in, right? I didn't get to laugh up here with the first time with these guys, I'll tell you that. I was the one being laughed at. But you know what? No, right? So just being said, I got 1 minute left going through the rest of them. I want to make sure that creating connection, right? Don't expect to create connection the first time and don't feel entitled to it. It is something that is just as honorable as having space. So give it time. Just like we said, it didn't take all this trauma to happen overnight. It's going to take a lot more than overnight or the first visit to build that trust and to get that buy-in. And I just also want to throw it out there, the last 2 points. Time, okay? We're always going to be time. You're going into social work. You're going to have deadlines for everything. You're going to be late on everything. So you're always going to be like going from one place to another and then like late. So you're going to be pressured. Don't rush them. There's a reason they need time. And so just like we've been hearing in these spaces, push back on those time constraints, because community is not linear. Community is not on a dial. So recognizing that. And if you really want to do this hard work, you have to you yourself buy into those community relational practices. And lastly, knowing when to listen and knowing when to apologize. That's my mic drop right there. You know, I'm here, I'm invited to some spaces, that's my honor too, but sometimes I still have to remind myself, I need to know when to listen. I still need to have the self-control that even though I have they paused my timer, thank you, we are very bad together. But yeah, so let's refocus. Apologizing is important because it's not weakness. It's actually a sign that you do want better. You do mean what you say, and you are human, right? We're all human. We're not expected to be perfect. We shouldn't hold our families accountable to that. And as a tribal social worker, I don't hold you accountable to that. But I do hold you accountable for honesty and transparency. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So on the next slide here, we have this. Oh, yeah. Oh, is it question time?
Oh,
Are we doing question time?
Yeah, question for a few minutes, yes.
Yes.
So I wanted to go back to placement for just a second. So I know that you guys had mentioned that the tribes could do assessments of homes, and that the county or whatever would be required to do background checks and live scan. But there are tribes that do their own background checks and live scans on their own, correct?
This is true.
And when the tribe does that and decides that that home with that background and that live scan meets their criteria for placement, the tribe doesn't have to provide that background check or that live scan data to the county, correct?
That I don't know. That I'm unsure of. Donald can answer that one.
That is right, but it's as far as, well, data sharing too, that's always been an issue as well, because even what tribes have sovereignty over their own data, right? So they don't really necessarily have to share it, but if it meets the tribe's social and cultural standards, that's a big change within the RFA, the Resource Family Approval process. If it meets those tribe standards, then that's good, and it should be accepted as that. And if it's not, please let us know.
Okay, I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure I was correct.
Yeah,
Okay,
cool,
thank
cool.
you.
And any other questions? We do have a little activity that we're going to do a little vignette about, but we got one back there. We have about 20 minutes, yeah.
Hi, my name's Joanna. I'm a Title IV student with Cal State San Marcos.
Whoop, whoop.
And, a graduating student.
Hey.
And I'm also a tribal social worker for Paula. So I had a quick question specifically for Donald, just because you're statewide right now. So I know that you mentioned, like ISU here in San Diego County. Is it on the table anywhere to create this for all counties?
In order to have a specialty unit in all counties?
I mean, to make it like a requirement for all counties to have one?
Ooh, requirements. See, when you start talking about requirements and then county and state, that's where it gets all funky, right? Because California is unique in that CDSS has the oversight, but we really can't point and tell the counties what to do, because 58 counties have their own little power fiefdoms, I don't know if that's the right word, to be able to do kind of how they want to do with their own policies and procedures. We will try to definitely recommend that they should have their own unit. Orange County is a perfect example of that. Priscilla, talked to her, because she's really starting to have those conversations within Orange County. Like, hey, you know what? We have a lot of trouble cases. We've had an inquiry unit for a long time. Why don't we expand that? Riverside County is another good example. No, ideally it would be great, but then there's another side of that coin too. Because even if you have a specialty unit, there's a tendency to think, well, if this is the tribal case, then, I don't have to learn about ICWA because it'll just go to the tribal unit, right? So there's that kind of thing we have to make sure that we address. Sunny?
I would, excuse me, I would recommend that for all y'all who are interested in working for counties and see the importance of having an Indian specialty unit is to be that person that drives that within your county. And like he gave a few examples of counties to reach out to get information on how to get that set up. It is very important. But when you do that, it's also important to from the county side of things, not to just say, oh, we have this fancy unit now, look at us, pat on the back. That's not how it should work. It's just the hard work that these folks were talking about of putting the Indian Specialty Unit together, coming together for 5 years at a time, working to get the protocol that works for them, right? So when you're in these counties and you are advocating for that unit, make sure that you are reaching out to the tribes in the area to talk about what does that look like for them, and what are the best ways to engage with those tribes, and consult with them, so you know that their needs, and then you will be able to put together a system that will work for the tribes, right?
I just want to do a really quick plug too. I know we're doing really heavy commentary towards the county. I also want to acknowledge the county's transitioned a lot, right? We're moving into a strength base. We're moving to meeting them where they're at, which is important. There's a lot of growth, and I want to honor that as well. The reason why we're highlighting all the history and the challenges is because history has a way of repeating itself. So take that with you, with the growth and the progress, and then keep it partnered with accountability, please.
And part of the Indian unit's job was really training other parts of their county too. They were kind of the experts there, but it was a double-edged sword where other social workers and other units didn't really need to learn about ICWA because that was their expertise. And so when we heard that, it was a big challenge to start saying, well, why isn't ICWA taught in the universities? Why isn't it taught in the master's programs at San Diego State? And Linda knows and remembers when there was a time where ICWA wasn't taught in your schools. And look at us today. That's why it really warms my heart to see all of you here and here today learning more after you've already had classes on Indian child welfare, because there was a day where that just did not happen. Okay, so on your tables, I invite you to look at the papers that are on your table. This is a vignette about an Indian family, and I would like for you to take about 4 minutes, if we would put the timer on, and read the first part of that story, and then we're going to go ask you a couple of questions. This is going to be very interactive, but please do not read any further than the questions. And then in your groups, discuss those questions, and then we're going to ask your responses. So if you can, among you, choose who's going to be the scribe, who's going to be the reporter, that would help us go a little quicker. And if you're just in a table of 1 or 2, you might want to join another table. Okay, so let's take 4 minutes to read the scenario, have a discussion, and then we're going to ask you these questions. Okay, so was this removal necessary? Who can tell me? Yes, please. Okay, she got kind of sidetracked, and
I don't even think this referral should have been opened in the first place.
Okay.
Because I don't see a nexus between grandma's marijuana use and child neglect or abuse. I see that you can possibly have that argument with mom and dad and their alcohol and marijuana use because of the domestic violence or intimate partner violence in the home. But they signed Indian custodianship, making grandma the caretaker, the legal guardian, and I don't see any information that says that other than grandma using marijuana, that there's any negative impact because of grandma's marijuana use. And marijuana is legal in the state of California, should be treated the same as alcohol. And I don't see that in that initial scenario information that was really taken into consideration.
Okay, we're recruiting her for the Indian Specialty Unit, right? Okay, very good. Okay, that's exactly what we wanted to get you thinking about. Now, how many with the hand raised have heard of an Indian custodialship declaration? Okay, a few of you. Okay, so that is a document that says that one tribal member from a federally recognized tribe can give the other tribal member from a federally recognized tribe guardianship. And it doesn't have to be endorsed by a court, although if you do, they'll give it some heaviness. It doesn't have to be notarized. It's something that tribal people can do with the simple form. And it's a form of prevention as well, and something that should be recognized. And really, there shouldn't have been a visit, but because grandma wasn't home there, and they approached an angry dog and an angry teen and an angry young person with your visit, they weren't happy to see you. That wasn't a reason for removal either. Because should we expect the families that we come visit being welcoming to us as social workers? That's where that engagement comes in, right? Okay, so Indian custodialship should have been brought out by grandma to let them know that we had an intervention with our own family, and we have custody, temporary custody, and here's the information. But grandma wasn't home. Okay, so they thought that there was enough to remove those children. And what else did they see that was a protective factor in this case? Raise your hand. What else was there? What about that junkyard dog? Yes. Yeah, they were afraid of the dog.
Yeah, but the dog just wasn't letting strangers come and approach who may have been a threat to the family.
Was the dog providing protective factors
I think so.
to the family?
Why not?
Yeah, he was protecting those children.
Also, who cares that she's unfriendly? What, you're not okay to take care of children because you're unfriendly?
Yeah,
That's
is that
funny.
a reason to remove because they didn't like me?
Uh-oh.
They were mean to me. They were angry. They weren't happy that I showed up to help. What were some of the cultural standards of an Indian community that you read or that you recognized in that scenario? Yes. This man right over here.
When they stop by the small market and speak to the clerk.
When they stopped by the small market, spoke to the clerk, they were worried about what? Confidentiality, that maybe this isn't a good place to place these children because everybody knows each other. There was a time where social workers would not place on the reservation close to the parent because, first of all, we don't have neighbors, we have relatives that live next door, live in the front, live in the back, live on the side. Yes?
I saw it as a protective factor because it kind of brought up like a community factor. How
A protective community factor?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we all look out for each other. We know who people are. And we also know when a county car comes, too. And then other families might show up. And that might be scary if it's a real early, maybe DEA drug visit. And then all of a sudden, you're in the early dark hours of the morning. And all of a sudden, these neighbors all come out. But they're all relatives. They're sisters, they're potential placements, actually. What were the assumptions in this case? Any assumptions? What about that soggy diaper? Okay, they didn't realize that it was a hot day and the kids were in the pool and it wasn't urine that was in that diaper, it was just the diaper is very wet. Okay, read on. Now the grandma shows up to the office, the kids are removed, put in stranger foster care, and now they're interviewing grandma. Read the bullets. Okay, now the interview is over. How do you feel now? Was that removal necessary? What do you do now? Thinking about active efforts, what can you provide the family now? Give them their kids back, okay? That's a great one. Somebody asked me, how do we reduce the numbers in foster care? Quit removing them. Help the family where they're at the time that they're there, okay? Find those referrals, make that connection, intervene, look for the resources, okay? Anything else that you could have seen? What about the little boy that's nonverbal with the soggy diaper? Is that an opportunity for maybe an assessment to seasons program? Okay. What else could we give this family? An apology. We like that one, Trish. Thank you. Yeah, that was a scary moment. And now the kids have had some trauma, right? Because even, we don't want to knock the foster homes that we train and that provide care for us, especially those relative homes. But kids do get hurt in foster care. We know that, right? We also know that they get murdered in foster care. So let's not add to that trauma. Let's really make it necessary if there is a removal. I know that sometimes there has to be a removal, but let's really work diligently on those prevention services and those active efforts. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to us. On behalf of everybody, we thank you. Enjoy dinner. Enjoy your break.
Miss Amalia. And then I just want to give a shout out to our youngest panelist up here because she graduates next week from Humboldt State. Angie Heredia, and she had a really good mentor teacher. She's Native American. Her name is Geneva Shaw, so she's very lucky and I'm jealous.
Let's give a big shout out. Thank you so much to Miss Linda, Donald, Sunny, Angie, and Karen. What a great, you guys are hearing from experts right here. Lots of years and hours of doing this type of work. So thank you so much.